Hey there, do you like hot, sandy deserts? How about being naked and alone? Don't worry, we don't judge. If so, this is the series for you. Last time, we met Ulysses S. Kant, but you can just call him Les. He's a young man without a family or a home. He wandered out here in order to escape his old life. In just his first week, he punched a hyena, watched a child die, and destroyed a raider's leg. Yet somehow, this life is better than the one he had before. Will Les be able to continue his momentum towards building a better future? Or will Cassandra have her way with him? It's time to find out. Join me as we continue this adventure together. As the morning sun began to rise over the barren desert, Les dug 2 graves in the soft sand near the fibercorn. He found himself staring down at the lifeless corpse of Dust Ox. The raider's body was contorted unnaturally, like he was trying to twist himself in 2 different directions, and his face was frozen in a final grimace of pain. Already, there was a small puddle of bile pooling beneath him, and the smell was akin to that of an overfilled latrine. The sight turned Les's stomach. This wasn't some glorious victory for him to celebrate. Sure, the raider tried to kill him, and yes, they were inadvertently responsible for the child's death, but none of that made it any easier. To Les, the most disturbing revelation was knowing that a small part of him enjoyed it. There was a darker feeling, a need for retribution, a way to lash out against all the wrongs in his life. Did he cross a line? As a student, he learned that martial arts were a shield for defending life, not a weapon to destroy it. He was justified in defending himself, yet he couldn't help but question where self-defense ended and cruelty began. He closed his eyes and dragged the corpse into one of the graves. As he piled the soft sand atop the body, he wished he could bury his guilt along with it. Each handful of earth felt heavier, laden not with sand, but with the weight of these unanswered questions. Perhaps the elements weren't his greatest adversary out here after all. Maybe it was himself. He forced away the thoughts the best he could, and soldiered on. Soon after, Les put on the man's shorts. It was better than seeing them go to waste. Being nude in the middle of nowhere didn't really make a difference, but the shorts kept most of the sand out of his more sensitive regions. He took the steel club as well. It wasn't a great weapon by any means, but it was more effective than his fists. After only a small amount of fighting, his melee skill had already reached level 2. At this rate, he would regain his former fighting ability in no time. Later that night, he buried Hacknaz next to Dust Ox. They were 2 lost souls who wound up out here like him. They were nothing alike, but now they were together in desolation. On day 7, the ostrich had tamed itself to us. Unfortunately, there was nothing for it to eat yet, and we had nothing to eat ourselves. I think you can see where this one is going. There were some new animals that wandered in as well. Man, that scorpion's really cool. I wish we could tame it. Imagine being a raider and all of a sudden a crazy man in a pair of shorts and a giant scorpion start chasing you? That's nightmare fuel right there. Another visitor arrived, this time a bounty hunter named Red Austin. Les greeted his guest as he swept away the blood into the sand. Hey there, friend. Nothing shady to see here. Just enjoy the nice crops. Afterwards, he began another sand-growing area, this time for cucumbers. 2 more members of the Muggers passed by, Ace and Steb. Oh wow, Maya Ace Portugas is an epic woman. She's an iron-willed drunken master genie. Sounds like a fun D&D character. After several days of patiently waiting, we'd finally harvested our first rice crop. This was the humble start of our sustainable food supply for the region. These crops were the genesis for what would one day become an oasis. He would transform this region into a home for lost souls like himself. Les hauled the freshly harvested rice over with the other supplies and proudly looked around at all he had. He found it ironic in a way. Over a week in an empty desert, and he already had more now than what he did back in Rustburg. The days passed by like the slow-moving ripples in the sand. Les spotted a saguaro cactus far to the east. The long hike it took to reach the plant was exhausting, but he knew the small supply of wood was well worth it. The cacti also had small fruit, but they were inedible and potentially toxic, so instead he carefully removed the seeds and placed them safely in his shorts pocket. On the return trip, he spotted the small sapling of an anima tree just north of a geothermal vent. Even at such an early stage, the wondrous sapling ignited a joyfulness from deep within him, for the tree was a clear sign that life was returning to the area once again. After his hike, Les immediately went to work planting the newly obtained saguaro seeds. Planting such seeds took a lot of patience and work, but thanks to all the practice, his plant skill was now high enough to do so. On day 12, a slave caravan from Viomala arrived. They were the first traders we had met out here, but unfortunately, we had nothing of value to offer them. So we just chatted and hung out for a while. Their leader, Siri Sintra, offered for us to tag along, but Les politely declined. I can only imagine what type of value we can bring to a group of slavers. The caravan left at first light, and to Les's surprise, they didn't try to kidnap him or rob him for his food. Instead, they had left him a gift of 72 silver. Though it was an ill-timed departure, they had left just before another raider had entered the region. It was the cancer men once again, this time a criminal surgeon named Tony. She was actually very dangerous despite her older age. She was a planet-known master of melee fighting. When Les saw the woman approaching, he did a double take. He recognized her from his youth. She was the master of a rival martial arts school. He remembered that she had lightning-quick strikes, but an even faster temper. She was banned from all tournaments for excessive violence, and had even attacked her own students when they dared to speak up against her. Les tried to reason with the woman. He even pleaded to her sense of authority by addressing her as sensei and master, but she merely spat when she heard those words. He needed a plan, and fast. He studied her for any weaknesses as she drew closer. There, he thought to himself, she had a slight limp, one in which she favored her left leg. That would be his main target, but first he needed some way to wear her down. Les knew he had one advantage over his attacker: speed. He rushed forward in a feigned attempt to make her think he was coming right at her, but then he pivoted and changed course at the last second, and she gave chase, only mere steps behind. "Please," he begged her, "this is a misunderstanding."
"Oh no,"
she snapped back. He could almost feel her hot breath on the back of his neck.
"There's no misunderstanding. You killed him. You killed Dustox."
Hearing that name again hit him as hard as a punch. The young man quickly changed direction again, this time into the soft sand of the lakebed. Each step felt like it would plunge him deeper into a sandy tomb, and it took all his concentration not to overbalance and fall. To his surprise, Tony was able to keep up with him, but she eventually started to slow down. For over an hour, he led her on a chase through the desert. He could see the sweat beginning to drench her face and clothes, but he wasn't sure how much longer it would take to tire her out. He was growing fatigued too, and needed to save some strength in case it really came down to a fight. He slowed for a moment and yelled again. It was in self-defense.
"There is no defense,"
she shouted back.
"just different forms of offense."
She finished the statement with a crooked grin and charged at him with an unexpected burst of speed. Les let out an involuntary yelp, nearly tripping over himself as he continued to flee. She has to get tired at some point, he complained to himself. He felt a pinch in his thigh and felt a cold panic running through his body. "No, not now," he pleaded as he could feel a cramp forming in his leg. He came to a sudden halt and spun towards his opponent. Then he entered into an exaggerated fighting stance, like some kind of crouching animal. But in truth, it was so he could stretch the cramp out of his leg without bringing too much attention to it. "I don't want to hurt you," he declared, trying to deepen his voice as much as possible. Tony stopped a few yards away and stared at him. A slight bit of optimism grew inside. Did she really want to talk this out after all? The woman began shaking. Then, she burst into an uncontrollable fit of laughter.
This is how you choose to die?"
she said between gasps, pointing at his ridiculous stance. Les snarled and straightened himself, then began stretching properly.
"I appreciate the warm-up jog,"
she said, cracking her neck and fists. Her tone grew deadly serious then.
"But now, you die."
She let the threat hang in the air, and neither of them moved an inch. A gust of wind pushed between them, coating the combatants in a light, sandy mist. This feeling of excitement and nausea blended together in one odd emotion felt familiar to Les, and he knew what that meant. The fight was on.
Things were finally going well for once, but now our hero's past has come back to haunt him. Can Les overcome his opponent's legendary fighting ability? Will a kangaroo ever become our friend? Will the saguaro cactus actually grow? Find out on the next episode of Rimworld Z.